There's a man in the Bible who didn't die. Think about that for a second. Every name you've ever read in Genesis, every patriarch, every prophet, every king, they all end the same way. And he died. And he died. And he died. The phrase repeats like a heartbeat through the early chapters of Scripture until you get to one name, one single man, and the verse breaks. It doesn't say he died. It says he was not, for God took him. No grave, no funeral, no final breath. He just walked and kept walking until one day he walked somewhere we can't follow. His name was Enoch, and for thousands of years people have been quietly obsessed with him because his story isn't really about how he left. It's about how he lived. What does it mean to walk with God for 300 years? What did he see? What did he hear? And why did heaven decide he was the one human being who didn't need to taste death to cross over? Tonight, we're going to find out. Because the more you understand Enoch, the more you'll understand something uncomfortable about your own life. To understand Enoch, you have to understand the world he was born into. And it wasn't a peaceful one. Genesis tells us Enoch was the 7th generation from Adam. 7. In Hebrew thought, 7 isn't just a number. It's the number of completion, of something whole, something set apart by God himself. So before Enoch ever takes his first breath, the Bible is already whispering to us, pay attention to this one. The 7th in the line, the one who carries something the others didn't, the one whose name was meant to be remembered. But here's what most people miss. By the time Enoch was born, the world was already going dark. Cain had killed Abel generations earlier. Violence was spreading like a fever. Men were building cities, forging weapons, multiplying, forgetting. The memory of Eden was fading like smoke at the end of a long day. Children were being raised by parents who had never seen a garden, never heard the voice of God in the cool of the day, never known what it was to walk in a world that was still good. The grandchildren of Adam were now grandparents themselves, and most of them had stopped telling the old stories. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, in the middle of a generation that was losing its way, a child was born named Enoch, which in Hebrew means dedicated or initiated, or the one who begins something new. His father was Jared. His son would be Methuselah, the longest living man in the entire Bible, who lived 969 years. And here's a detail that will haunt you once you see it. The name Methuselah in ancient Hebrew can be read as his death shall bring it. It shall bring what? The flood. Do the math. The year Methuselah died is the exact year the waters came. So Enoch named his own son a prophecy, a walking warning. Every time he called the boy's name across the field, every time he tucked him into bed at night, every time he said his son's name out loud, he was reminding the world and reminding himself that judgment was coming. Imagine being that father. Imagine the weight of that. Imagine watching your boy grow up, knowing what his name meant, knowing what it foretold. Imagine the way other people in the village must have looked at you, the strange one, the serious one, the man who named his son a warning, like he knew something the rest of them didn't. But here's where the story turns. In the middle of a corrupt generation, in the middle of a culture sliding toward destruction, in the middle of a world that had forgotten what it was made for, the Bible says something about Enoch that it says about almost no one else. 5 simple words. 5 words that have echoed through 3,000 years of human searching. Enoch walked with God. That's it. No miracles listed, no armies defeated, no temples built, no throne, no fortune, no fame in his lifetime as far as we know. Just a man and his God, and a road they walked together for 300 years. And I want you to sit with that phrase because it's stranger than it sounds. The Bible doesn't say Enoch worshipped God. It doesn't say he served God or feared God or prayed to God, though I'm sure he did all those things. It says he walked with him like a friend, like a companion, like two people heading the same direction, in the same rhythm, talking about everything and nothing, the way old friends walk, the way a father walks with a son who isn't a child anymore, the way two people walk when they don't need to fill the air with words to feel close. When was the last time you walked with someone like that? Someone you didn't have to perform for. Someone who already knew you, really knew you, the worst of you and the best of you, and stayed anyway. Someone whose silence felt like home instead of a question you had to answer. Someone you could just be with. That's what Enoch had, and he had it for 3 centuries. Now, here's the question that should be making you uncomfortable. If walking with God was possible for a man living in the most corrupt generation in human history, without a Bible, without a church, without a single book to guide him, what's our excuse? Let's slow down here, because that phrase, walked with God, gets thrown around in churches like everyone already knows what it means. But I don't think we do. Not really. I think it's one of those phrases we've heard so many times we stopped hearing it altogether. We nod along when someone says it, we file it away, and we miss it. In the ancient Hebrew text, the word used is halak, and halak doesn't mean a one-time event. It doesn't mean a Sunday morning. It doesn't mean a moment of conversion at a youth camp when you were 16. Halak is in a continuous tense. It means to keep going, to walk and keep walking, day after day, year after year, decade after decade. It's the kind of word that has dust on its sandals, the kind of word that doesn't impress anyone but God. It's a word built for the long haul. Walking with God isn't a sprint. It isn't a moment. It's a direction. And here's the part that catches me every time I think about it. Enoch didn't have what you have. He didn't have a Bible. He didn't have churches. He didn't have worship music in his earbuds on the way to work. He didn't have podcasts or sermons or commentaries or a single book about how to find God. He had no temple, no priesthood, no written law. Moses wouldn't be born for thousands of years. No Psalms to memorize, no gospel to read, nothing. All Enoch had was the silence and his own steady feet and the quiet, daily decision to keep moving in God's direction when everyone around him was running the other way. Think about your own life for a second. Think about all the resources you have. Think about how easy it is, technically, to know about God. The number of sermons available to you in the next 30 seconds on your phone would have astonished every saint who ever lived. And then ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you actually walked with Him? Not talked about Him, not posted about Him, not argued about Him online, walked with Him. There's a difference between knowing someone exists and being in their company. You can read every biography ever written about Abraham Lincoln, but that doesn't mean you knew the man. You can memorize every verse in Scripture, but that's not the same as walking the road with the one who wrote it. Information isn't intimacy. It never has been. You can know everything about someone and still be a stranger to them. And I think this is where most of us get stuck. We've turned faith into a subject, something to study, something to debate, something to defend, something to argue about at dinner. But Enoch didn't study God. He walked with him. There's a quiet difference there, and that quiet difference is everything. There's an old story passed down through Jewish tradition. It says Enoch was a shoemaker, a simple craftsman, nothing impressive, nothing memorable to look at. And the story goes that with every stitch he sewed into a sandal, he was binding his soul a little closer to heaven. He didn't need a mountain. He didn't need a burning bush. He didn't need thunder or lightning. He just needed his hands, his work, his breath, and the awareness, moment by moment, that God was right there beside him, watching him work, walking with him through every ordinary hour of every ordinary day. That's the part nobody tells you. Walking with God doesn't usually look spiritual. It looks like Tuesday afternoon. It looks like the way you treat the cashier when nobody's watching. It looks like what you do when no one's watching. It looks like the conversations you have when you're alone in your car. It looks like the thoughts you let live in your head at 3 a.m. when sleep won't come, and the house is quiet, and there's nothing left between you and yourself. Enoch's whole life, 365 years of it, was woven from those small, invisible moments, the kind nobody writes down, the kind that don't make it into history books, the kind only heaven sees. And somewhere in the middle of all those ordinary days, something extraordinary started happening to him. Heaven started getting closer. But that's where the story takes a turn most people aren't ready for. Here's where the story gets strange. And I mean strange in the way that ancient stories are strange. The kind that make the hair on your arms stand up if you read them late at night, alone, with a lamp on, and the rest of the house asleep. Because Enoch wasn't just walking quietly through life, minding his own business, fixing sandals, and raising his son. Somewhere along that long road, heaven started showing him things no one else was meant to see, things most of us couldn't carry if we tried. Now, the book of Genesis only gives us 4 short verses about Enoch. 4, that's it. But there's another text, the Book of Enoch, that's been preserved for thousands of years, quoted by early followers of Jesus, even quoted in the New Testament itself, in the book of Jude. Most people have no idea this text exists, and whether you take it as scripture or not, what it describes is something every honest seeker should sit with for a moment. It says Enoch saw things no man had ever seen. He was taken up, in vision, in spirit. We don't fully know, and shown the architecture of creation itself. He saw the storehouses of the wind, the chambers where the snow is kept, the paths the stars walk through the night sky. He saw angels, beings of fire and light, moving through realms most of us only sense in dreams. He stood, the text says, before a throne so bright he couldn't lift his eyes. But he also saw something darker. He saw what was coming for his generation. He saw the corruption. He saw the violence. He saw the flood, hundreds of years before it arrived. He saw judgment lining the horizon like a storm gathering over the sea. He saw it all in detail, in silence, alone. And imagine carrying that. Imagine being a father, a husband, a quiet shoemaker walking the dusty roads of an ancient world. And inside your chest, you're carrying visions of the end. You go home, you eat dinner, You hold your son. You laugh at something, and underneath all of it you know, this is what nobody tells you about walking with God. The closer you get to Him, the more you start to see what He sees, and what He sees isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it breaks your heart. Sometimes it isolates you. Sometimes you look around at the world, at the people you love, at the things they're chasing, at the lives they're building, and you realize you can't unsee what's been shown to you anymore. Enoch became a preacher. The book of Jude in the New Testament says he prophesied. He warned his generation. He told them what was coming. He stood in front of people who didn't want to hear it, and he said it anyway. And we have no record, not one verse, that says anyone listened. Think about that. 300 years of walking with God. 300 years of carrying these visions. 300 years of warning a generation that mostly mocked him, ignored him, or simply didn't care. And he kept walking anyway. He kept showing up. He kept telling the truth. There's a loneliness to that, isn't there? A specific kind of loneliness that only people who've tried to live differently can understand. The kind of loneliness where you're surrounded by people, but you feel like you're speaking a different language, where you go to family dinners and you smile and you nod, but inside you're carrying something they'd never believe if you tried to explain it. Where you stop trying to explain it after a while because you're tired and they're not ready, and maybe they never will be. Maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you're feeling it right now. Maybe there's a part of you that's been quietly walking in a direction nobody around you understands. A part of you that senses something deeper, something true. Something other people seem perfectly fine ignoring, but you can't. A weight you can't put down even when you want to. If that's you, listen carefully, because Enoch's story is for you. He wasn't celebrated in his lifetime. He wasn't followed by crowds. He didn't build an empire or a religion or a movement. He just kept walking, faithfully, quietly, daily, with a God most people around him had already forgotten. And then, one day, heaven decided he had walked far enough. There's a moment in this story I can't stop thinking about, and the Bible doesn't describe it, not directly. It just gives us that one impossible sentence, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. That's it. No thunder. No chariot of fire. That comes later with Elijah. No witnesses, as far as we're told, just an absence. One day Enoch was here, and the next day he wasn't. The road kept going. He just stopped appearing on it. But I want you to imagine the scene, because somebody had to notice. Somebody had to be the first one to realize he wasn't coming back. Imagine his wife, waiting at the door of their home as the sun went down, setting the table, listening for his footsteps on the path. He always came home before dark. He always came home. 300 years of marriage, and he had never once been late. Never. Not once in 3 centuries did she set the table and wonder where he was. Imagine her looking out at the road, watching the horizon. Imagine her calling Methuselah, "Have you seen your father? Has anyone seen your father?" Imagine the search parties going out into the hills, retracing the paths he was known to walk, calling his name into the wind. Lanterns moving through the trees as the night came down, and finding nothing. No body, no torn cloak, no sign of struggle, no final goodbye. Just nothing. Like the road itself had swallowed him whole. like he'd stepped sideways out of the world. I think about his family for a long time when I read this passage, because the Bible focuses on Enoch's transition. But somebody had to live with the absence. Somebody had to keep going, with an empty chair at the table and a story nobody would believe. Methuselah lived another 700 years after his father vanished. 700 years of explaining what happened. 700 years of carrying that strange, beautiful, impossible loss. And maybe you know something about that. Maybe you've lost someone too. Maybe not the same way, but lost them. And maybe there's a part of you that's been quietly wondering for a long time. Where do they go? When the body's gone and the room's empty and the silence is louder than any sound, where do they go? Here's what the Bible is hinting at in that one quiet verse. It's hinting that death, the thing every human being fears most, the thing that hangs over every story since Adam and Eve, isn't actually the end of the road. For Enoch, the road just kept going. He stepped from this world into the next one, without breaking stride, without missing a beat, without even knowing, maybe, that he had crossed over. The author of Hebrews, thousands of years later, looks back at this moment and writes something that should stop us cold. By faith, Enoch was translated that he should not see death. Translated. Like a sentence moved from one language to another, the same meaning, the same person, just spoken now in a different tongue. Enoch wasn't destroyed. He wasn't deleted. He was translated, carried across, from this realm into the realm he had been quietly walking toward his entire life. And here's the part I want you to feel. Hebrews goes on to say something even stranger. It says before his translation, he had this testimony, that he pleased God, not impressed him, not earned his approval, pleased him, like a friend who shows up, who keeps his word, who walks beside you through every season. Enoch pleased God simply by being with him, by choosing him, by staying close day after day, year after year, in a world that kept trying to pull him in every other direction. And one day, after 365 years of that quiet, daily friendship, God looked at the road ahead and decided he didn't want to walk it without him anymore. So he took him home. Not because Enoch was perfect, not because he was extraordinary in the way the world measures extraordinary, but because somewhere along that long road, a man and his maker had become inseparable. And when two friends are walking that close together, eventually one of them is going to invite the other one inside. And that's exactly what happened. Quietly, without fanfare, the way every real friendship ends, or rather, begins. Now, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself, not with me, with yourself, because nobody else is in the room right now. It's just you, and the sound of my voice, and whatever's been quietly waiting in the back of your mind for you to finally sit still long enough to hear it. If God came for you tonight, the way he came for Enoch, what would he find? Would he find a man or a woman who's been walking with him? Or would he find someone who's been walking near him? There's a difference, a massive difference. Walking near God means you go to church on Sunday. You say grace before meals. You believe, in some general way, that he exists. You think about him sometimes. You pray when life gets hard. You're a good person, mostly. You've never killed anyone. You're not the worst person you know. Walking with God is something else entirely. It's a relationship. It's a rhythm. It's a friendship so consistent that the people closest to you start to notice you've changed. Not louder, not more religious, just quieter, more grounded, less afraid, less reactive, more present. Enoch wasn't dramatic. The Bible doesn't tell us he led a revival. It doesn't tell us he raised the dead. It doesn't tell us he built a great kingdom. It tells us, very simply, that he walked, and he kept walking. And one day, that walk became eternal. I think about my own life when I read this story. I think about the years I spent running, the years I spent chasing things I thought would fill me, the years I spent angry or numb or distracted or busy enough to never have to sit alone with my own thoughts. And I think about how much of that was just me trying not to walk with God, because walking with Him meant slowing down, and slowing down meant feeling things I had spent years not wanting to feel. Maybe that's where you are. Maybe you've been running too. Maybe you've kept yourself busy on purpose. Maybe the silence scares you. Maybe you're afraid that if you actually got quiet, really quiet, God would show you something about yourself you don't want to see. Some old wound, some old choice, some piece of you that's been waiting for permission to come up for air. But here's the secret Enoch knew. The secret that only people who've actually walked with God for a long time ever figure out. When you walk with Him, He doesn't show up to condemn you. He shows up to be with you. The God of Enoch isn't waiting at the end of the road with a list of your failures. He's already on the road. He's already walking. He's been waiting for you to fall in step beside Him. He's been there the whole time, matching your pace, never rushing you, never pulling away. There's a beautiful thing about a long walk with someone you love. You don't have to talk the whole time. You don't have to perform. You don't have to fill the silence. You can just be. And in that being, something invisible is happening. Trust is forming. Roots are growing. A friendship is being woven, thread by thread, mile by mile, year by year. That's what 300 years of walking did for Enoch. It wove him into heaven so deeply that when the time came to cross over, there was no shock to it, no tearing, no grief on his part, just the next step, the most natural thing in the world, like coming home from a long trip and finding the lights still on, the door already open, dinner already on the table, someone you love already waiting up for you, like they knew you'd find your way back. And here's the question that should haunt you tonight, the way it haunts me. What if your life, your one quiet, ordinary, complicated life, was always meant to be a long walk like that? What if every single day, every conversation, every meal, every drive home, every sleepless night, what if all of it was an invitation to walk beside the only one who has ever fully known you? What if you've been hearing footsteps next to you for years, and you just kept telling yourself it was the wind? Enoch heard them, and he turned, and he started walking, and he didn't stop until heaven took him home. The invitation is still open. It's been open the whole time. If you're still here with me, this far into the video, I want to take a second and say something real. I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel and walk with us every day. Because what we're doing here isn't entertainment. It's a slow, honest conversation about the things that actually matter, the things most people are too distracted to talk about anymore. And if any of this is reaching something inside you, then you belong here. So hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and let's keep walking together. Now, back to Enoch, because there's one more layer to this story I haven't shown you yet, and it might be the most important one. The Bible places Enoch at a very specific moment in human history. He lived right before the flood, right before the most catastrophic judgment the world had ever seen. And the early followers of Jesus, the writers of the New Testament, believed something strange about that timing. They believed Enoch was a prototype, a preview, a whisper of something that would happen again at the end of time. The Apostle Paul writes about a future moment when the people who belong to God will be caught up, translated, transformed, without ever tasting death. Sound familiar? The early Christians read that, and they thought of Enoch. They thought, it's already happened once, to one man, quietly, in the ancient world, and one day it will happen again, to many. Whether you believe that or not, there's something undeniable here. Enoch's life was a sign, a small, quiet sign placed at the very beginning of the Bible to tell us something about how the story ends. Death is not the final word. Walking with God is. The grave is not the destination. Friendship with the eternal is. And every step you take in the right direction is a step that already belongs to forever. And I think this is why Enoch's story has lasted for thousands of years, not because of what he did, but because of what he proved. He proved that a single quiet human life, lived in close company with God, can outlive everything. Empires fall, cities crumble, generations forget themselves. Names that were carved into stone become unreadable. But the man who walked with God just kept walking, right past the boundary the rest of us call death. I want you to think about your own life again, not in some abstract way. I want you to think about the specific roads you walk every day, your driveway, your kitchen, the route to work, the hallway between your bedroom and the bathroom at 3 in the morning when you can't sleep, the grocery store, the gym, the coffee shop, the park where you walk your dog, the stretch of sidewalk between your car and the door you have to open every morning, whether you want to or not. Those are your roads. That's where your life actually happens, not in some distant future, not on some mountaintop. Here, on the ordinary, repeated, unremarkable paths of your everyday existence, the ones you stop noticing because you've walked them so many times. And here's what Enoch's story whispers to you across 30 centuries. Those roads can become holy, not because of where they lead, but because of who can be walking beside you on them. The most ordinary path becomes sacred ground the moment you stop walking it alone. You don't need to move to a monastery. You don't need to memorize 1,000 verses. You don't need to become a different kind of person before God will walk with you. You just need to start, one step, then another, then another. Tomorrow, when you wake up, try it. In the silence before the noise of the... There's a detail in Enoch's story I saved for the end, because I wanted you to feel the rest of it first before I told you this. The Bible says Enoch lived 365 years, and if you've been paying attention to numbers your whole life, you already know what that one is. It's the number of days in a year, one full revolution, one complete cycle around the sun. Enoch's life, in the language of the cosmos, was one complete year, one full season of walking. And then the season turned, and he went home. I don't think that's an accident. I don't think any of this story is an accident. I think the Bible placed Enoch right there, in the 7th generation, at the dawn of human history, with a name that means dedicated, and a son whose name means judgment is coming, and a lifespan that mirrors the rhythm of the heavens themselves. To tell you something it could never say in plain words. You are walking through your own year, right now, tonight, whether you feel it or not, whether you believe it or not. Your one full revolution is already underway, and every step is taking you somewhere. The only question is who's walking beside you. I'm not going to tell you what to do with this. I'm not going to wrap it up neatly with a moral or a slogan. Enoch didn't need one. Neither do you. You already know. You've known the whole time. There's a part of you that's been quietly listening this entire video, and it's the same part that's been listening your whole life, waiting for you to turn around, waiting for you to fall into step. The footsteps next to you aren't the wind. They never were. If this story moved something in you tonight, even a little, do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share this video with 5 people you love, 5 people you think need to hear what Enoch's life is whispering across 3,000 years. You never know which one of them has been waiting in silence for someone to remind them that the road keeps going. And before you close this video, leave a comment. A real one, not a polite one. Tell me honestly, where are you on your road right now? Are you running? Are you tired? Are you walking? Have you been hearing the footsteps? And tell me what you want to hear next. What story in the Bible has been quietly haunting you? Whose life do you want me to walk you through next? Tell me in the comments, and I'll meet you there. Until then, keep walking.